guys, it's Mo. And as the dust is settling and things are, becoming more of a recovery operation and the waters are receding, it seems like more information is coming out about possible missteps that were made, at least in the safety and evacuation at Camp Mystic, the Christian all girls camp, where unfortunately there has been just a devastating loss of life for young girls and, their counselors, anyone who was at the camp. So, the failures that left Camp Mystic girls at the mercy of a Texas flash flood. Now, most residents of Kerr County, Texas, would have been asleep when flash flood warnings or alerts came on their phone early in the morning of Friday. So, this was about 2 or 3 o'clock that this was going out. Now, a few hours later, many of them were woken by neighbors hammering on their doors or dogs frantically barking. Others would not have woken until floodwaters engulfed their beds, and for many, it was already too late. The Kerr County towns that lie along the Guadalupe River, which surged more than 20 feet in less than an hour on Friday morning, bore the brunt of the floods and suffered the most losses. Now, the story leading up to this tragedy is one of grave mistakes. Now, this is from the article's perspective. I haven't read the article yet, so let's see what was going on. Because it is always very, very easy to, Monday morning quarterback, to, armchair, I'd have done better. But like I was talking about yesterday on Mornings with Mo, I'm from, Indiana, the land of the tornado siren. And I can tell you that they go off so often and there's, not a thunderstorm or it doesn't quite hit as hard as they thought. They become ubiquitous and somewhat background noise. So if we had gotten sirens, would people have paid attention? That's the other part of this that people forget. If you are not in a if you're in a place and these are kind of known things, they become it's not going to happen today, or they've warned us 27 times and we've only gotten thunderstorms. So there is a sort of, that not paying attention when it becomes normal in your life kind of thing. So that's my 2 cents. It's not about what happened when the Guadalupe burst its bank or the immediate aftermath where rescuers frantically tried to save lives. It's about how officials in a Texan disaster hotspot known as Flash Flood Alley failed to act years before. Now, the disaster is one of the most lethal floods in U.S. history, with a death toll, sadly, of more than 100 and climbing, including 28 children. Now, dozens are still missing, with 10 girls from Camp Mystic among the missing still. Now, authorities vowed that one of the next steps would be investigating whether enough warnings were issued and why some camps did not evacuate or move to higher ground. Camp Mystic was built on the banks of the Guadalupe River, a well-studied high-risk flood zone according to mapped data from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Now, much of the camp, including a number of the cabins, so let me see if I can. So basically, they were in a high flood plain. If the river is right here, this area all around here is going to be at exceptionally high risk of jumping the bank. We have 2 roads going out of my neighborhood that I know if it rains a lot, we are stuck in our neighborhood. So, this is something that can be documented, that can, be used as, a sort of guideline to build safer or understand the level of danger you're taking on if you build here. So much of the camp, including the cabins where the girls had been sleeping, are located in a zone with a 1% annual chance of flooding. Now, some cabins were located in what is known as a floodway, the main channel through which floodwaters would flow in a 100-year event. Now, in such zones, residential construction tends to be heavily restricted or outright banned. However, the bunks were built long before the restrictions were put into place. And again, If this is 100 years old, maybe they didn't have the wealth of knowledge or the data when they built these cabins to think, it floods here every once in a while. But again, this is hindsight looking back in. Now, pictures were taken in the aftermath of the disaster to reveal just how high the floodwater reached inside the camp building. So, the water was all the way up to just about the top of the windows. And all of this is now unusable. Floodwater is dirty. It's full of all the debris that it's swept up. It's, got diseases. It's not going to be, you think water, it's not going to be much of a mess. No, no. It's now a soggy, moist, moldy mess. Now, several girls who went missing in the floods were in low-lying cabins on the flats where the junior campers live, just 225 feet from the riverbank. Meanwhile, senior campers were staying in 9 cabins further from the river in a section known as Senior Hill. Now, speaking out on Monday afternoon, officers said questions would be answered once we can get the search and rescue complete. I think this is totally fine. I mean, you need to take time to find all the people who could miraculously, have survived, or just give people their family members back so that they can, honor them and put them, in, just have memorials, just say goodbye. Meanwhile, Ted Cruz, the Texas senator, was quick to admit that something had gone wrong. The fact that you have girls sleeping in their cabins when floodwaters are rising, something went wrong there. We've got to fix that and have a better system of warning to get kids away from harm's way. Now, although the area is volatile, the veracity and speed of floods, took the authorities utterly by surprise. Rest assured, no one knew this kind of flood was coming, Judge Bob Kelly, the chief elected official in the county, said on Friday. Now, county officials had previously suggested the possibility of flood sirens, but that would be too extravagant, and taxpayers refused to, increase their taxes to pay for them. That meant that the safety of Kerr County locals, again, everyone is saying if we had these sirens, it would happen. Do you want to know what happens when the sirens go off in the Midwest? In places where we're told all the time, okay, the siren's going off, you need to get to your basement. You start to ignore them because they have gotten so good at possibly being able to predict that this might be a very bad storm that they're now using them for bad thunderstorms, straight line winds. So you have to look at your phone to see why they're actually, giving out this warning, this siren. And people get used to them. You get used to them if they go off and it doesn't happen. So it's not the panacea of all things. It's not going to fix everything. I do agree that an early warning sign should be great, but these people were getting alerts on their phones as well. Why, when you get an alert of a flood warning, do you not take those children away from the river? I think that's what most normal people want to know. I could give a rat's rah-rah about the sirens. I know this is going to turn political and you're bad, no, you're all a bunch of douchebags, okay? Let's find the missing. Let's find people's family members and allow them to grieve. And then we can have the political rope-a-dope that is, hey, we done told you and it wasn't our fault. The dance of deniability can happen, but let's not do it while people are still missing their relatives. How about that? Now, that meant the safety of Kerr County locals, many of them out in caravans and mobile homes ahead of the 4th of July celebration, were dependent on a flash flood text alert sent out by the National Weather Service. Now, there were 2, one at 1:14 a.m. and one at 4:03 a.m. local time. In Caryville, Hunt, Ingram, and Comfort, which lie along the route of the Guadalupe, most people were asleep. at Camp Mystic, an all-Christian girl camp in Hunt, where some of the cabins were just feet from the banks of the river. Guidance issued to parents suggested that children would have had to hand in all of their electronic devices. Now, I do, once the dust is settled, want to figure out if there was a 24-hour on-call adult that got the messages, if the devices were confiscated so that the girls could naturate. But I do want to see if there was someone that was supposed to be an adult there, a night mom, a night, you know, management operator, I don't know. But it does seem a bit, astounding to me that this is you're getting warnings and no one moved those children. And maybe there will be an explanation, not an explanation that we understand, but in the moment it felt right. But we need to get some of these answers when the dust settles. Now, when the river swelled some 26 feet in the space of 45 minutes around the time of the second alert, the results were disastrous. Of the 91 people confirmed passed away so far, a vast majority were killed in Kerr County, and of those 27 of them were either girls or counselors staying at Camp Mystic for summer break. A further 10 girls and one counselor is still unaccounted for. Now, some figures have spent years attempting to raise the alarm about the county's lack of flood defenses. Tom Mosier, a former Kerr County commissioner, pushed to create a warning system in 2016, but it never materialized, and there were budgetary concerns. It sort of evaporated, he told the New York Times. It just didn't happen. Another commissioner reportedly voted against approving a $50,000 study grant for sirens and water gauges that would have been installed along the Guadalupe. I think the whole thing is a little extravagant for Kerr County with sirens and such, he told local media at the time. Taking these funds out of special projects from road and bridges, it really ticks me off a little bit. Then in 2017, the county applied for a $1 million grant from FEMA for a warning system, which ended up being rejected by the government. Now, according to Kerr County minutes, the most funding was sent to help communities that had been shattered by Hurricane Harvey instead. At the time, Mr. Mosier called it bad news. Just how bad is only now becoming clear. Now, as recently as October, just months before the deaths caused by last week's brutal flooding, Kerr County documents show it deemed installing sirens along the Guadalupe River a high priority and said that the devices could be installed for the relatively inexpensive sum of about $1,000 each. Now, again, we have gotten to the political part, which I'm going to skip over because you're all a-holes if you're going to politicize this. The bodies aren't even in the ground. I am so done with this. Republicans, Democrats, how about you shut your yaps and help the family? That being said, y'all know me. I'm a Lewis Blackian. I think they all suck. Now, several positions are vacant in Texas's San Antonio and San Angelino, National Weather Service office, including a warning coordination meteorologist. Now, experts have pushed back on claims that understaffing caused a delayed response from the National Weather Service. Now, as far as I know, the National Weather Service was predicting this and did sound out these warnings. So I don't know where this is. Unfortunately, this is probably going to still be relevant because Texas is bracing for yet more flooding, with much of its central counties covered by a warning in varying severities. So, I get it. There's going to be time. We live in 2025, you inglorious bastard. There will be time to, he said, she said this. But let's get all the people home. Let's get everyone home before we do that. And we can argue about the efficacy of, sirens and everything else once everyone's home. But I find it truly insane that people want to again start using this for politics. We have people that have lost their entire homes, their entire families, and what can we think of? Hot takes on, the twit twats, as Baker would say. That being said, this story does break my heart, and if you are of the persuasion, recovering Catholic, terrible Christian, wherever you hitch your horse to it, keep these families in your thoughts and your prayers. See if there's any local charities that are gathering supplies for people to rebuild. We take care of each other. That is the one thing that when everything gets and political, I take heart in. That, there are local charities around here in my neck of the wood, Nowheresville, Indiana, that are getting, supplies to go help people, to go help put things back together, to go help people who have lost everything. If nothing else gives you hope, let that give you hope that there's going to be some, brain jackasses on either side, but there's also going to be hope, help, and a hand offered in comfort. So, those are my thoughts and 2 cents on the whole thing. Thank you for getting up with me at 6:25 a.m. to go over this. I appreciate it greatly. Do all the YouTubey things and be kind to yourself, be kind to others, but have a sassy mouth and carry a can of bitch fire, because I don't want to hear jibber jabbering from either side. I want to see boots on the ground helping these people out and stuff the political stuff for now. Let's do important stuff like taking care of fellow humans.